This show is part of One Place, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to today's Roundup. We are diving into the escalating energy crisis, shifting economic benchmarks for families, and the strange new world of AI influencers. Let's get into the details right now.
Securing the Strait of Hormuz remains a massive military challenge.
Oil prices dip as Israel pauses attacks on gas fields.
Iran's energy strikes trigger a massive spike in gas prices.
NVIDIA's CEO wants engineers spending heavily on AI tokens.
Accor investigates serious human trafficking allegations from a short seller.
Shell facility damage in Qatar sends gas prices soaring higher.
Bank of England holds rates steady amid rising inflation fears.
Families need six figures to feel truly economically secure today.
AI influencers are now cloning real creators' bodies and homes.
Unilever considers merging its food division with rival McCormick.
Starting with the energy crisis. The assumption that the U.S. Navy can simply flip a switch and keep the Strait of Hormuz open is being tested like never before. Robert McNally, a former Bush administration official, warns that the market's disbelief is draining away as the conflict drags on. We're looking at a situation where 20% of the world's oil flows through this choke point, and the military reality is sobering. To truly secure these lanes, the U.S. would need to systematically degrade Iran's arsenal of cheap drones, missiles, and mines. This isn't a weekend operation. Analysts suggest it could take weeks or even months of sustained military effort to make the route safe for tankers again.
It is a massive logistical and tactical nightmare because the threat is so asymmetrical. While the U.S. has the firepower, the sheer volume of low-cost threats makes the strait incredibly difficult to police. We've already seen Brent crude prices jump significantly, hitting over $100 per barrel and even spiking toward $120. Year-to-date, prices are up nearly 80%, almost entirely driven by this war. If the combatants start targeting what McNally calls the crown jewels of the global energy system, like major gas fields or refineries, we could be looking at the largest energy disruption in history. The economic ripples would be felt in every corner of the globe for a long time.
Now for some market movement. We did see a slight reprieve in energy prices today after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed to hold off on further attacks on Iranian gas fields. This move came at the request of President Trump and immediately cooled the markets, with Brent crude dipping about 1.7%. However, even with this dip, prices are still nearly 50% higher than they were before the conflict began. In the UK, the FTSE 100 actually rallied, led by travel and hospitality firms like EasyJet and IAG. Investors are clinging to any sign of de-escalation, but the underlying uncertainty remains incredibly high. Analysts at Deutsche Bank are warning that inflation could still peak above 3% later this year.
That uncertainty is the key word here. While the stock market is showing some optimism, the historical playbook for geopolitical shocks suggests we might be near a bottom for equities. But this conflict is anything but normal. The inflation outlook is particularly murky because energy costs have such a long tail. Even if prices stabilize at these higher levels, the pressure on consumers is immense. We're seeing gas futures trading nearly 90% higher than pre-conflict levels. While government support might help curb some of that energy inflation, the reality is that the cost of living is being fundamentally reshaped by these events. It's a fragile moment for the global economy as we wait for the next headline.
Next, the regional escalation. The conflict took a much darker turn when Iran launched retaliatory strikes against energy facilities across the Gulf. This included a massive missile attack on Qatar's Ras Laffan energy hub, which is a critical piece of global infrastructure. This wasn't just a symbolic strike. It caused a 35% surge in European gas prices almost instantly. The UK is now stepping up its defensive support for Gulf states, with the RAF already flying sorties to intercept drones. The Bank of England has responded by holding interest rates at 3.75%, scrapping plans for a cut that many homeowners were desperately hoping for. The warning is clear. This war could push inflation to 3.5% by July.
The political rhetoric is also heating up. President Trump has threatened to massively blow up Iran's South Pars facility if the attacks don't stop, claiming the U.S. military is actually ahead of schedule in its operations. Meanwhile, allies like Oman are calling the U.S. and Israeli strikes a grave miscalculation. It's a dangerous tit-for-tat cycle that is dragging in more countries and threatening the stability of the entire region. For the average person, this translates to higher energy bills, more expensive flights, and the looming threat of even higher interest rates. The Bank of England's decision to hold rates is a direct consequence of this volatility, signaling that the era of cheap borrowing is firmly in the rearview mirror.
Shifting to Silicon Valley. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang has a very specific new metric for his top talent: how many AI tokens they're using. He recently stated that if a $500,000 a year engineer isn't consuming at least $250,000 worth of tokens, he'd be deeply alarmed. To Huang, underutilizing AI is like a modern chip designer insisting on using only paper and pencil. He views tokens as a way to amplify an engineer's productivity by 10x. In fact, he's even suggesting that tokens should be a core part of compensation packages. Imagine getting half of your base pay on top as a credit for AI compute power. It's becoming a major recruiting tool in the hyper-competitive world of Silicon Valley talent.
It's a fascinating shift in how we think about work and tools. Tokens are the basic units AI uses to process text, and Huang is essentially saying that the more you use, the more valuable you are to the company. This idea of tokens as compensation is gaining traction beyond just NVIDIA. Some venture capitalists are calling it the fourth component of pay, alongside salary, bonuses, and equity. The logic is that giving engineers unlimited access to AI inference power allows them to experiment and build at a pace that was previously impossible. If you're not using the tech to its full potential, you're falling behind. It's a high-stakes environment where your digital consumption is now a performance metric.
Now to a corporate crisis. The global hotel giant Accor is facing a serious crisis after a report from short seller Grizzly Research alleged that some of its hotels were involved in human trafficking. The report specifically claims that Accor properties in countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan ignored signs of child trafficking involving Ukrainian orphans being moved toward Russia. Accor has vehemently denied these allegations, but has immediately launched an internal investigation across its network. The news caused Accor shares to drop sharply, highlighting how even unproven allegations can create an instant PR and financial nightmare for a global brand. The company is now under intense pressure to prove its safeguarding protocols are robust enough to detect such horrific activity.
This situation underscores the massive risks global corporations face in volatile regions. Short sellers often use these kinds of explosive reports to drive down stock prices, but the nature of these specific allegations is particularly damaging. If there's even a shred of truth to the idea that hotel staff are turning a blind eye to the movement of children, the legal and ethical fallout would be catastrophic. Accor's investigation will need to be incredibly transparent to regain investor trust. It also serves as a wake-up call for the entire hospitality industry to tighten their monitoring of bookings and guest behavior, especially in transit hubs where trafficking is known to occur. The reputational stakes couldn't be higher for the French hotel group.
Back to the energy front. The damage to Shell's Pearl GTL facility in Qatar has sent shockwaves through the energy markets. This plant is vital for converting gas into liquid products like transport fuel and motor oils. When Iranian missiles hit the Ras Laffan industrial city, it caused sizable fires and extensive damage. While Shell reported that all staff were safe and the fire was quickly extinguished, the disruption to such a key facility pushed UK natural gas prices to a 3-year high. At one point, prices spiked by more than 20% in a single morning. This attack directly targets the supply chain that keeps Europe's transport and heating systems running, making the conflict feel much closer to home for millions of people.
The market reaction was swift and brutal. The FTSE 100 saw almost all its stocks tumble, with house builders and banks taking the biggest hits. The only outlier was BP, which saw its stock rise as oil prices crossed the $115 mark. This divergence shows just how much the energy crisis is sucking the air out of the rest of the economy. When gas prices hit 172p per therm, it's not just a number on a screen. It's a massive increase in operating costs for every business in the country. President Trump's threat to retaliate by blowing up Iranian gas fields only adds to the fear that we haven't seen the peak of this price surge yet. It's a very volatile time.
Focusing on the UK economy. The Bank of England's decision to keep interest rates at 3.75% was a unanimous one, but the mood in the room was clearly somber. Just a few weeks ago, the path seemed clear for a rate cut as inflation appeared to be heading toward the 2% target. The war has completely upended those projections. Now, the Monetary Policy Committee is warning that inflation could hit 3.5% by the third quarter of this year. The disruption in the Strait of Hormuz and the attacks in Qatar are feeding directly into petrol pumps and utility bills. There's even talk now that rates might actually have to rise further if the situation doesn't stabilize, which is a terrifying prospect for anyone with a mortgage.
It's a complete reversal of the economic narrative we were hearing at the start of the year. The bank is also warning about rising food prices, as the cost of shipping and fertilizer is being driven up by the same energy spikes. This creates a perfect storm for the cost of living. When all 9 members of the committee vote for a hold, it shows a high level of concern about the inflationary pressure coming from the Middle East. They are essentially in a wait-and-see mode, but the wait is becoming increasingly expensive for the average household. The hope for a summer of economic relief has been replaced by a defensive stance against a global energy shock that shows no signs of slowing.
Looking at American households, a new study from the Urban Institute has put a very high price tag on the American dream. According to their research, a typical family with children now needs an annual income of $145,000 to be considered economically secure. This isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. Having enough for housing, healthcare, childcare, and even savings for retirement and emergencies. The shocking part is that about 49% of Americans fall below this threshold. Even though the median income for married couples is around $128,000, that still leaves a significant gap. Many families who earn six figures are still feeling the pinch, describing their lives as being on a hamster wheel economy, where they pay bills but never actually get ahead.
This concept of the hamster wheel really resonates because it captures the feeling of working hard but staying in the same place. Economic security today includes things that used to be considered standard, like being able to afford student loan repayments and having a cushion for emergencies. When half the population feels they aren't reaching that bar, it has huge implications for community involvement and personal autonomy. The study points out that when people feel their efforts are rewarded and they have financial breathing room, they can devote more time to their families and communities. Right now, the rising costs of basics like utilities and health insurance are making that sense of security feel increasingly out of reach for millions of middle-class families.
Next, the AI influencer threat. Influencer Gracie Nielsen had a terrifying experience when she discovered a digital clone of herself on TikTok. An account for an AI influencer named Sienna Rose had posted a video that was a shot-for-shot replica of one of Nielsen's own clips. The face was different, but the body, the outfit, and even the background, which was Nielsen's actual home in California, were identical. It's a new and deeply uncomfortable form of content theft. Sienna Rose has over 1.5 million monthly listeners on Spotify and a massive following, yet there's no evidence she's a real person. AI detection tools have even flagged her music as being computer-generated. This is a major red flag for creators who are now seeing their physical likenesses and personal spaces being harvested.
It's the ultimate uncanny valley moment for the creator economy. These AI influencers are being used by brands to reduce labor costs, but they're often built on the backs of real people's work. Nielsen's reaction video went viral because it tapped into a collective fear that our digital identities are no longer safe. We're seeing AI music hit the Billboard charts and AI being used in major films, but this personal level of cloning feels much more invasive. For creators, the only way to fight back right now is to call it out and hope for better platform regulation. As the technology becomes more accessible, the line between a real person and a digital echo is becoming dangerously thin, and many fans don't even realize they're following a ghost.
Finally, a food industry merger. Unilever, the giant behind household names like Marmite and Hellmann's, has confirmed it's in talks to merge its food business with the U.S. spice maker McCormick. This could be a massive shakeup in the grocery aisles. Unilever has been looking to streamline its operations, recently spinning off its ice cream business and selling off brands like Gray's. The goal seems to be a sharper focus on beauty, personal care, and home products. By combining its food division with McCormick, the makers of French's mustard and Schwartz spices, they would create a powerhouse in the condiments and seasonings market. While Unilever says there's no certainty a deal will be reached, the fact that they've received an inbound offer shows how attractive these legacy food brands still are.
It's a strategic move that makes a lot of sense for both companies. McCormick is a leader in flavor, and adding heavy hitters like Hellmann's and Knorr would give them incredible scale. For Unilever, it's about shedding a slower growth division to chase the higher margins in the beauty and wellness sectors, where they've been acquiring fast-growing brands like Dr. Squatch. This potential merger is part of a broader trend of consumer goods giants slimming down to become more agile. If it goes through, we could see a lot of innovation in how these classic brands are marketed and distributed globally. It's a high-stakes game of corporate chess, where the prize is a dominant position in the world's kitchens.
That's our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us for this daily update. Be sure to follow the show for your next briefing tomorrow. We'll see you then.